All right, Rube, it's time to finish this countdown.
Yeah, we have the final 48% here coming up.
All right, this is the Eagle Eye Podcast with Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. Last week, we counted down the 25 most important Eagles from 25 to 13. Let's quickly recap, and then we'll jump back into it. At number 25, Quez Watkins. 24, Gardner Minshew. 23, TJ Edwards. 22, Marcus Epps. 21, Landon Dickerson. 20, Jake Elliott. 19, Brandon Graham. 18, Jordan Davis. 17, Kaiser White. 16, Avonte Maddox. 15, Nakobe Dean. 14, Fletcher Cox. 13, James Bradbury. And now at number 12, a guy who we've talked about quite a bit the last few weeks, Miles Sanders.
Yeah, we've talked about him a lot, but his importance can't be overstated, I don't think. I think he's potentially top 10 running back or a little higher just with his ability, but we just haven't seen him put it together for a full season. Even his rookie year, he ended up with good numbers, but there's a stretch early in the season where he wasn't running the ball well. There was games where he wouldn't only get a few carries. So he's 3 years in, and I really don't know who he is or what they have. I know he's got some ability, but especially considering his contract, he'll be a free agent. He's scheduled to be a free agent if he doesn't sign anything. To me, he's a really fascinating guy in this team because I just have no idea what to expect from him.
Yeah, and because this offensive line is so good, I think we all have the question in our minds, like how much better is he than the next best option? Because at times you see like Boston Scott will go in there for a game and play really well. Kenny Gainwell had some success last year. Jordan Howard had his games the last couple of years that looked really good. Last few years looked really good. So I guess that's part of it too. How much better is Miles Sanders than their next best option? That kind of matters when you're putting together a list of how important someone is. But I still think he's much better than the other guys they have.
Interesting. Yeah, I would agree with that. He's got the home run ability. I thought last year he ran more decisively. He didn't dance around as much. It's funny because he had about the same average last year as the year before. The year before, he had 3 runs that were like 70 yards or more. This past year, he didn't have any long runs, but he had the same average, which tells you, he's pretty much getting 4 or 5 a pop. He doesn't have a lot of negative carries, which I think some people think he has more than he has. I like the player more than a lot of people, but he's got to show he can do it. I think he's really, really important. They're not going to run the ball as much as last year, but they are going to run a significant amount, and they need him.
All right, number 11, Josh Sweat, who had a pretty good year last year, was the Pro Bowl alternate, eventually made the Pro Bowl roster for the first time in his career. I don't think he quite played to a Pro Bowl level, but he was better. And the thing with Josh Sweat that we've seen in his career, he gets better with each passing year.
That's true. He has. And again, like you see with late round picks. So he wasn't a late round pick, 4th round, just kind of mid-round pick, but he is so important to this team because look, I don't think Derek Barnett is going to – I don't even know what his role is going to be. I don't think he's going to all of a sudden in year 6 – he's going to 6th year?
5. 6.
6. Yeah. He couldn't have forced that fumble or recovered that fumble if he's going into year 5. Going into year 6. We're math majors here. I just don't think he's going to suddenly just turn it on and become a 8 to 10, 12 sack guy. So we know BG is important because he's BG, but Josh Sweat to me becomes critical on this team because I don't know where the pass pressure is coming. I know Hassan Reddick will be getting it from the Sam linebacker spot, but as far as defensive ends, I just don't know. I don't know if you can count on BG and Derek Barnett. So who does that leave? It leaves Josh Sweat, and he's crucial.
Yeah, he really is. And he ended up with 7.5 sacks, but the impressive thing was the way he finished the 2021 season. He was really good down the stretch, and it was a shame for him, obviously, that he missed the playoff game with that internal bleeding, pretty serious stuff. And I don't think they win the game if Josh Sweat plays, but he was really important. He was coming on really strong toward the end of that season, and it makes you wonder if he would have played well in the playoff game too.
I think he had 3 sacks in his first 10 games, something like that. So I guess he had 4.5 in the last 7 games, which is, about 11, 12 sack production over a full year. And that's what he needs to do. I think that's what the expectation is. He's a Pro Bowler. He's got the contract.
In that 4-game win streak at the end of the year, he had 4 sacks.
Okay. So that's 17 sack pace right there.
Now that is good math. I won't take that from you. All right.
Yeah, that one wasn't above me.
At number 10, Devontae Smith, who honestly would be higher on this list if they didn't go out and land themselves another number 1 receiver, but
landing themselves.
He's still obviously a huge part of this offense. But trying to figure out where he comes on this list was a little tricky because he's no longer the top option. So he can't be more important than the top option, but his numbers are probably going to improve because of that.
Yeah, that's why this list is so hard.
Mm-hmm. And you can see the pretzel twists I get myself in trying to put it together.
Yeah. It's like any ranking. It's just, but that's what makes it fun, and because there is no clear, there's no clear right or wrong. It's just kind of something you can really, really toss around. We're in the top 10 now. I don't know if I'd put Devontae in my top 10. Just because of the role and A.J. Brown's presence, Goddard's presence. But he'd be close, and you can certainly make that case. It's fascinating to me how you went so defense heavy in the first half. The top 10, it looks like it's 7 offensive guys and 3 defensive guys in the top 10. I just gave it away. But yeah,
I tried to really not think about it like that.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's just funny how it worked out that way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Devontae is. I did a piece pretty early in the offseason, 10 reasons why I think he's going to improve, and I went back and reread that, and I really do believe he will. Now, obviously, that was before A.J. Brown was here, but I really do believe we'll see a better player. I think Jalen's hoped for improvement will help that. I think A.J. Brown will help that. I just don't know how much that's going to show up in the numbers, because
I think he'll increase.
I do. I think he'll be. I think he'll be over 1,000. I'm really curious to see where he is as a player.
It is tough though, because we talk about like all these guys, and it's like it's probably not going to work out that way.
Yeah, I mean they're not going to have 5,000 passing yards. It's just not going to happen. So, yeah, that might be a fun little thing to look at to project how many yards each receiver is going to have.
Yeah, so on the last or on a podcast recently, we talked about the over under for Jalen Hurts passing yards, just like 3,400. Well, like, how's this going to happen if you can't have AJ Brown with 1,000, Devontae with 1,000, Goddard with 1,000, and then
Quez with 600.
It doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, so somebody's gonna have a disappointing season. We've already established that.
But the numbers kind of tell you that, unless
Jalen could throw for 4,200.
Yeah, which isn't crazy.
Yeah.
All right, number 9 on the list, Dallas Goddard, who I think is already an elite tight end. I think he's a top 5 guy right now, and I think this season we're really going to see that in action.
Yeah, and I think I've made a lot about the stats after the Ertz trade, which I believe was week 7.
Yeah, October 15th.
Yeah, after that trade, he had the 4th most yards of any tight end in the NFL after the Ertz trade. And it was the first time in his life he had been the guy, and he played like it. And yeah, I think we're just kind of so used to Ertz putting up huge numbers that you don't really. I guess there's a tendency not to look at Goddard the same way, but he's really, really good, and he's a better blocker than Ertz. And I'm a big Zach Ertz fan. I mean, the guy won a Super Bowl with 2 of the biggest catches in Eagles history, so you'll never hear me knock him. But I think Dallas Goddard potentially could be as good a player.
Yeah, in a much different way.
Yeah.
He'll
never catch 118 balls.
Yeah, he's never going to be the volume guy that Ertz was, but he is more explosive.
He'll get more yards per catch, certainly.
Yeah.
I mean, he was at 14.8 last year, I think.
Yeah, he's a big play guy.
14.8 for any player is high.
Yeah. Especially
much,
a tight end.
Much less a tight end. I mean, that's like a historic number. And he didn't have any like 70s. That was just on good, solid production. And man, he's really good and a great blocker.
Yeah, he is. And last year, Pro Football Focus, take it for what you will, had him ranked as tied for the second best tight end in the NFL, along with George Kittle. Only Mark Andrews was above him, but I think you can whatever the rating and rankings there, but I think he's a top 5 guy.
I think he's better than Mark Andrews. If you look at targets, I mean, Mark Andrews had like 100 more targets than Dallas Goddard last year.
He did.
And Dallas Goddard had like 200 fewer yards. So you talk about efficient and making the most of your targets. Goddard has Mark Andrews beat by a long shot.
Number 8, Javon Hargrave. Another guy coming off a Pro Bowl season, even though he wasn't an initial pick to the Pro Bowl, was an alternate, got in. And he's kind of the opposite of Josh Sweat, who, Josh Sweat finished really strong. Javon Hargrave got off to an incredible start. The numbers kind of went down as the year went on, but he was still pretty effective.
Yeah, his sack numbers went down, but I thought he played well straight through the season, really. For interior linemen, you take the sack numbers with I don't say a grain of salt. They're big, they're important, and you want them. But I don't think that's really how you measure that position. So I liked the way he played. I thought he was just really, really solid. I'm glad he finally made a Pro Bowl. I thought he deserved it. And I really think at that position, there's a lot of unknowns. I think Fletcher's an unknown, and we talked on the last podcast about his kind of gradual decline over the years. We don't know what Jordan Davis is yet. Milton Williams is a young guy who could play inside and outside, but Javon Hargrave, he's just really solid. He's going to give you everything he has. And to me, he's definitely one of the 3 or 4 most important defensive players on the team, just because he's the one interior lineman that you know what you're going to get from him.
Yeah, and you're right. They need that baseline. They need to have that guy, that steady force they can count on, because you're right, there are other unknowns. We don't know how the decline from Fletcher. We don't know exactly Jordan Davis or Milton Williams. What they know is that Hargrave needs to be consistently disruptive this year if they want to have some pass rush up the gut.
Yeah, and again, he's kind of like Miles. He's in that situation where he doesn't have a contract after this year, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, that's the one that's almost a little surprising that it's not even done, right? I mean, you're entering that final year. It was a 3-year, $39 million contract, so $13 million per year. He's going to need a pay bump now because he's come here and played really well, but maybe it might be tough to figure out the price, but I would think the Eagles want to get him signed.
I would think so too. I mean, maybe they're thinking we go into next year with Jordan Davis and Milton Williams and go young. But I would hate to lose Hargrave.
Yeah, maybe they'll see what Milton has this year if they think he can become a legitimate starter. And then maybe you're right. Maybe then that money is better spent elsewhere.
Yeah.
But for now, I look at this and I think, man, you better try to get Javon Hargrave under contract.
I agree.
All right, next one. We are up to number 7 on the list. We go to the offensive side of the ball. The left tackle, Jordan Mailata.
Your left tackle is always going to be probably a top 10 guy for good or for bad. And he has just come so far. I remember talking to him in a locker room. That's how long ago it was when we were in the locker room. Just, he had those back injuries. Like, well, that didn't work out. He's never going to get a chance. And look where he is now. It's really an amazing story.
It's funny because we're around it so much. And he's a left tackle. What do you mean? But it's insane.
It really is.
It shouldn't have happened.
Yeah. Yeah, it couldn't have happened. And you know what's amazing about Mulata is
It's gonna be a movie, right?
it should be. Yeah. He just how this is a guy who just never watched football, never knew, but he's got like all the mannerisms, he's got all the lingo. It just comes in a Australian accent. And but I guess I mean rugby is a really physical game, and you know what are the odds that somebody who's so physical at that sport could not only learn a technique and learn how to how to line up and how to understand what pass rushers and all that stuff, but also take that physicality and that violence and transfer it to a completely different sport. And that's what he's been able to do because he plays.
I think in a lot of ways it almost maybe didn't help him, but I think it helps Stoutland that he got to start from zero. You know, he didn't have to erase bad habits.
Yeah, that's true. But the physical aspect of the game that you don't really see from people that haven't played it, and he's been able to. I mean, plays the game, violently and ferociously, and man, he's got a lot of heart. Yeah,
and from a mental standpoint, it was tough. Like it was obviously really tough, and Stoutland is not a walk in the park. You know, he really does get after him, and he's on him every day. And I always credit Jordan for that because because he comes off as this like fun-loving guy, but he really has responded to that style of coaching. And if that wasn't a perfect match, there's no chance that he's their starting left tackle right now.
That's a great point. Yeah. Yeah. Stout, people can react in different ways to Stout.
Yeah.
You can break you or it can make you. And Jordan just knew how to respond to him, and Stout gets the most out of guys like that.
All right, we're up to number 6. Darius Slay, CB1, played great last year.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the way the league is now, man, your CB1's going to be a top five guy on a list like this. He's going up against the best receiver, and last year I thought he played okay his first year here. Played well.
He was fine.
But last year you really saw what an elite.
He was making the plays last year that he just missed the year before.
Yeah. And the ball just came to him. And you could see, I mean, he was elite last year. And man, I love his attitude. I love his sense of humor, his swagger. He's just one of those guys that you just love to watch, whether he's playing or doing an interview or just walking around the locker room or the field or whatever it is. He's really impressive. And he would definitely be up there on my list too.
Yeah, I wonder how long he can play at this level. Cornerbacks drop off, and he's over 30 now.
Yeah.
But based on last year, they need him to play at that level again.
Yeah, they do. And long term, they need to develop some corners.
They need to draft some corners.
They haven't developed any. Yeah, they haven't drafted any, in a high round in quite a while. So, I mean, Avante as a slot, but as far as outside corners.
Yeah, I mean, they drafted Sidney Jones back in 2017.
And Rasul
in the 3rd round that year.
Yeah. And they weren't, Rasul wasn't a complete disaster. He played okay. Sidney was just always hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Had a couple flashes, but it's a position that at some point they're going to have to think about. But for now, they're in pretty good hands.
Yeah. All right, number 5, a position they've been in pretty good hands for a while. Lane Johnson at right tackle. I think sometimes we take Lane for granted a little bit.
Yeah, you've said that. I mean, he's a 3-time Pro Bowler.
Mm-hmm.
He's just solid. He's just a solid guy. Maybe because Mulata is such a great story and left tackle, we focus more on him. But Lane has been here since 13, since Chip's first year, and he's so consistent. He just never plays bad. And yeah.
He's as solid as they come. The things he can do athletically, not many guys can do. The things he can do technique wise, not many guys can do. And like we've seen such a big drop off, and they've had good backups. Not that they haven't had good backups, but it's a noticeably different offense when he's out there and when he's not out there.
That's true. It's amazing how when you see Lane, you just like everyone looks so small next to him, and then when you see Lane next to Mulata, Lane looks small.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. But yeah, I mean, look, he's going into what, his 10th year? Is that possible?
It's possible.
I wish I was better at math, but yeah, 3 and 2. He's going to his 10th year with the Eagles. I mean, he's an all-time Eagle. He's a Eagles Hall of Famer, right?
Yeah.
How many of these guys on this list are Eagles Hall of Famers? Well, I don't want to do that until we're done with the list.
Yeah, let's finish the list first.
That's a good idea.
Let's go to number 4. AJ Brown, a big acquisition. Finally, that top target everyone had been waiting for. And I think I have him so high because I really think he's going to change the complexion of the offense.
Yeah, I get that. And I think he's just so important to Jalen Hurts as well. And that just that, I mean, he's, you know, I think I said this on another podcast. If AJ Brown just catches one ball per game that wasn't caught last year, you know, just 17 catches over a season, you know, that's the difference.
I'll take the over, by the way.
Yeah, me too. But I mean, I'm not saying, well,
I know
it's catches that weren't caught last year. So
I understand.
Just that alone, takes Jalen Hurts from 61% to 65%. You know, so, you know, the difference between 61 to 65% quarterback is the difference between mediocre and decent, you know, above average. I think the average in the league last year was 64.2. That's 4 passes every 100 passes. So that's 1 every 25 passes. So it's about 1 per game. It's amazing. So AJ Brown is the first legit number 1 proven stud wide receiver this team has had in a while. And look, Alshon, I don't think I put Alshon. I mean, he made some really big plays while he was here in 17 mainly. But he never was a consistently productive, you know, there was always that frustration element. Alshon could be better, especially when you look at what he did in Chicago and when you looked at his contract.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was past his prime. He was still a really good player. You have a player in AJ Brown who he might not have hit his prime yet, you know, and that's an exciting part of it. He's already, you know, a Pro Bowl caliber player, and there might be more room to grow there.
Yeah. And it's just something that this offense needed so bad. I mean, he's going to make Devontae better. He's going to make Jalen Hurts better. He's going to make Nick Sirianni better. I mean, it's just a huge signing.
All right, number 3, we went from a newcomer to a guy who's been here longer than almost anyone else, Jason Kelsey. As long as he's here, he's going to be pretty high on this list.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about one of the best centers to ever play the game. And it's interesting to me how since last year ended, I think we've all kind of stepped back. And like when Kelsey, like there's always that, like you think about like, what if he retires until he announces that he's not. And you start to think like, I don't want to see this team I can't imagine seeing this team without Jason Kelsey. You start looking at his accomplishments. And I think when the season ends, you get to take a step backwards and like 4 all-pro first teams, that doesn't happen. And you start to like compare him to other greats and you realize you add it all up that this is one of the greatest Philadelphia Eagles who's ever played the game and still playing at an absolutely elite level. So I can't argue with number 3 for Jason Kelsey. He's a legend who's still playing, and we're just so lucky to have him and to be able to watch him. And he's 6th round pick, man, in 2011. Unbelievable.
Yeah. And I think you really hit it there because the importance that he presents for Hurts is huge. And you know, maybe he's less important now this year than he was last year, just because now they have his heir apparent in the building. Whereas last year, I mean, every time he left the field, have a heart attack because here comes Nate Herbig who was a good guard, but to snap the ball over Hurts' head, it was always an adventure. At least now you have Cam Jurgens, who you think is going to be able to play one day in this league. So maybe from that standpoint, he's not as important, but he still means an awful lot to this team.
And I think his value transcends his elite play too. I mean, he's a guy that everyone looks up to on both sides of the ball, that coaches look up to, offensive and defensive. He's such a wise, he's seen everything. I mean, he's seen everything since he's been here. I mean, you think about it. I mean, he got here, in 2011. I mean, he was here under Andy Reid. I guess BG, Kelsey, and Fletch under Andy Reid. That just seems like ancient history, but he's seen it all. He's had ups and downs, but we know he's a tremendous natural leader. He doesn't speak up often, but when he does, man, I'm sure it's so quiet in that room because everyone just respects him so much. He's great with the young players. I mean, he's just, if you put him at number one, I wouldn't have any qualms with it.
Yeah. Well, he's not. We have to get to that.
I was waiting for the transition there. Yeah.
And number two, Hassan Reddick. This is a team that had 29 sacks last year. That's not good enough. And no matter how much weight you put into sacks, that's not good enough. It still kind of shows you that they weren't getting enough pressure on opposing quarterbacks last year. Hassan Reddick should change that. This is a guy who's racked up sacks the last few years, and he needs to get pressure, consistent pressure for this team to be successful.
Yeah, it's interesting how two of the top four are newcomers.
Yeah.
One on offense, one on defense, and both at positions that have historically been subpar around here. And they're both just huge additions. I think Reddick is a little bit more, I guess I'm more sold on A.J. Brown.
Okay. Why do you think that is?
Maybe just because he's had more. I mean, Reddick's had two really good years the last 2 years. A.J. Brown's been really good every year he's been in the league. Well, that's only 3 years. That's one more year. I get that. But I don't know. Maybe some of it has to do with, just the 3-4 thing that, I don't know how much 3-4 they're going to play. We don't know that. But we'll see. I mean, it's
not like he's only going to be out there on 3-4 situations.
No, but I don't know. I don't know how productive he'll be as a defensive end in a 4-3. I just don't know. So,
well, he'd still. Yeah, he wouldn't be. I don't think he's going to play defensive end.
Okay, well, we'll see. I mean, I guess scheme fit is probably, like, I know A.J. Brown is a perfect scheme fit. I got to see how Hassan Reddick fits in, I guess.
I get that.
But look, if he does what he's done the last 2 years, I mean, this team hasn't had a guy get double-digit sacks back-to-back years since Trent Cole, I believe. So that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
So certainly a huge addition. And, you mentioned the 29 sacks. It ties the fewest they've ever had in a season since sacks became an official stat. And I think even when they were unofficial, it's their most since the fewest since the early 70s one year, 73 maybe.
And as much as you can talk down the importance of that stat, no one's going to be like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, and that's something that coaches say when their teams don't have a lot of sacks. Like if the Eagles have 50, then no one's going to say, well, they're not important.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Number one, shocker here, the quarterback, Jalen Hurts.
I thought it was Devin Allen. I didn't see Devin Allen in the first 24. I figured he was number one. Yeah. I mean, we've talked about him a lot. And somebody asked me today, I was sitting in a coffee shop on Walnut Street. And they said, how are the Eagles going to do? And I was like, just depends on the quarterback. And we could talk about all these other guys, whether it's Landon Dickerson or Josh Sweat or James Brown. I mean, it's going to come down to Jalen Hurts and how much he improves. And other things, there's other factors. Obviously, other players are important, but I mean, if he's elite, they're going to be really, really good. If he has a disappointing year, they're not going to be really, really good. It's that simple.
Yeah. And you look at it now, it's like he has a team around him. I mean, this is a pretty good team.
Yeah.
When you're going through this list of players, the roster looks really good on paper. Offensively, they look really good on paper. It's just a matter of whether or not he can take them to that level. And he has all the tools now.
Who's their worst offensive starter? Like, who's the offensive starter we're most concerned about?
I guess the right guard.
Probably the right guard, who we've said is like, a possible Pro Bowler in the past.
Yeah.
That tells you where the offense is. And, defense maybe a couple more question marks. But Howie Roseman has done everything he can possibly imaginably do to create a situation where Jalen Hurts can thrive. If he doesn't, there's no excuses. There's no excuses. There were last year.
Mm-hmm.
He had Jalen Reagor out there for 736 snaps. This year, there's no excuses.
Yeah. All right, let's look through this list a little bit. You know what stood out to me as we were going through it?
Yeah.
That Jalen Hurts at 1 obviously wasn't a surprise, but there were a bunch of guys that are about Jalen Hurts. Like Lane Johnson at 5 is a lot about Jalen Hurts. A.J. Brown at 4 is a lot about Jalen Hurts. Jason Kelsey at 3, a lot about Jalen Hurts. It's such obviously a quarterback-driven league, but that's the reason those positions are pushed up toward the top.
Yeah, that's true. And Goddard at 9 even.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's kind of why 7 of the top 10 and 8 of the top 12 are offensive players.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's your offense. I mean, who are the offensive starters that aren't on here?
Sayamalu. That's it.
Wow. How about that? Yeah.
On defense, the only starters not on here are Anthony Harris. And that's it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's going to come down to Jalen Hurts, and it's going to be fun seeing how this kid develops. There's no reason to think he won't improve. I think you said it earlier or another podcast, or maybe it was last year. It's not whether he's going to improve. He will. It's just how much. And we just don't know his ceiling. I know whatever he's capable of becoming, he will become that guy because he's going to put in the work, and he's getting the coaching. He's got the pieces around him. Yeah.
All right.
What are the odds at the end of this year will be like, Jalen, we just need to see him for one more year just to really.
Well, the problem then is he's in a lame duck year.
Yeah.
Which happens, but you'd imagine a team with 2 first-round picks would like to figure this out.
True. Yeah.
All right. You got anything else before we wrap this up?
No, it's just fun. Good job on this.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's always fun to do. Give us the feedback. Let me know what I screwed up here.
Can we do the least important players on the roster?
No.
Okay.
If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. That's it. We'll talk to you later. For Rube, I'm Dave.